Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Now streaming live, it says.
So welcome to this new book news reading, celebrating writers whose books were published during the pandemic lockdown. My name is Karen Schubert, and I'm the director of Lit Youngstown, a literary arts nonprofit in Northeast Ohio. We have programs for writers, readers, and storytellers. I'd like to invite you to an online writing workshop, Elements of Scene, taught by fiction writer Meredith Dench, which will be Tuesday, January 5th. For more information, please visit lityoungstown.org. Thank you for joining us. I am over the moon to feature these three poets today, and congratulations to them on their publications. We'll follow this afternoon's readings with a conversation about these new books. Yvonne Zipter is the author of poetry collections The Patience of Metal and Like Some Bookie God, and the nonfiction books Diamonds Are a Dyke's Best Friend and Ransacking the Closet. Her Russian historical novel, Infraction, will be published in 2021. Yvonne's new book is Kissing the Long Face of the Greyhound, published by Terrapin Books. Welcome, Yvonne.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks so much. And thanks to the other readers and everybody tuning in today. I just wanted to give you a look at the cover, if I can do it without getting, it's pretty sensational. I'm very lucky to have gotten such a wonderful cover. I'm going to start out with the title poem in the book and read another of the poems that features one of my greyhounds over the years. So to begin, Kissing the Long Face of the Greyhound. My dog's head is the exact shape and size of a Brooks leather bicycle saddle, and I love to seat a kiss on the snout of her, bending over that jetty of face, our heads cheekbone to cheekbone, if a hound can be found to have cheeks. Feel the velvet of that peninsula on my lips, the faint scent of grime and grass, the ghost of a tongue trail grazing her platinum fur. The thrill of knowing we are only the span of a sense memory from past perfidy, a whisker's breath from pointed tooth and unfurling flesh. This one's called Exaltation. When the universe, like a smitten lover, surprises me with its generosity, its play of ordinary against radiance, the quick of me ignites like a wick, a sizzle of light and heat in the hurricane lamp of my body. In the apple snap of a November night, I stand with the children in the squat patch of yard, while the dog, like a silvery spirograph, cuts teardrop loops across its corner, her feet hammering the weary lawn, her breath illuminating the rhythm. The boy is on the bench, the little girl in my arms, and the dog turns oval after oval. We forget to count how many times. Never have the children witnessed such abandon as this greyhound. This machine of muscle and spirit ferries in her DNA. They laugh for all the joy of it, for the bass beat of paws on hard earth, pounding in their chests, for the terror of such reckless pleasure. And while I'm reading poems about animals, I thought I'd read a couple more, but not dogs. This one's called The Turtles Are Sunning Themselves. The turtles are sunning themselves, lined up like dinner plates along a server's arm on the log reaching up from the lagoon's shallows. But the sliders slip from their sodden perch into the drink the minute they sense me on the crumbling path ringing the pond. I wait a while, because they're worth waiting for, hoping they'll resurface if only I'm still as a stump. but they come by their wariness naturally and watch me from a distance, their necks extended like periscopes above the water's murk. I think what I admire is their naked admission that our bodies are too soft for the dangers of this world. I stand there a while longer, ringed in shadow by the noon sun, watching the blurred boats of their bodies move languidly beneath the surface like dark thoughts. This one's titled Cleaning Fish, Post Lake, July 1941. I always thought the photo of my grandfather and his brother with the scarred wooden table between them on which they are gutting fish was about them, about the scarred woman that came between them. But realize now the photo is about my mother, whose arms are no wider than the perch her uncle takes a knife to, whose eyes are level with the metal tub on the table where the men throw the entrails, her overalls hanging loosely on her small frame, her shoes invisible in the duff of leaves and pine needles, a froth of curls around the tip cup of her face, who isn't afraid of the knives, the blood, the slick viscera, the bright rain of fish scales, who isn't afraid to look at death. And that's kind of a natural segue into this next little set of poems, which are a little on the somber side. This first one in this little grouping is an ekphrastic poem based on the photograph Poet's Pencils in Memoriam by Galen Morgan. The pencils speak of impermanence. They hardly recall the trees from which they came. Their self-hatred, how quick they are to deny their own musings. Every day they feel diminished by their own efforts. Their ability to hold teeth marks in their flesh only showcases their surrender, their willingness to be made smaller. At their sharpest, they are notably vulnerable, easily broken, not by bruising wit, but by clumsiness and passion. Any promise once held, potential to create a masterpiece, to harbor genius, has been rendered over time improbable as they've shrunk in stature and come to look like old men in their wedding suits, huddled for company, but who knows for how long. Outside their cozy, they hear the familiar scrape of something being written. It sounds like a lame foot in a boot dragged across pavement. This is called Manners of the Flesh. If I lift my eyes toward heaven, will the rest be raised up too? If I press my hands in the manner of prayer, a hitchhiker of the spirit, will I arrive? If I kneel beside the bed of a loved one, her body a splinter in her soul, an ache in my heart, a rent in the mantle of our history, if I submit to the idiosyncratic nature of the mind of life, which converts a gland, the spitting image of an almond, into a thorn, a spike, a bullet hotly seeking a mark, if I let the salt of our collected tears push like thumbtacks into my blank flesh, will the reckoning of her days do arithmetic tricks like loaf and fish in the hands of an illusionist? The body is a temple, is temporary, temporal, tempestuous, untenable. The body is an atheist, damn it, even in war. This one's titled Little Moon. All the years of my childhood, I'd stand between my young mother and the shelves of 1921 Encyclopedia Britannicas, the moldering National Geographics behind the rocking recliner with its wildly floral cover, stand above the little bald spot at the end of the sagittal suture, where the Taymyr Peninsula would be if her forehead were Canada, her eyebrows the US border. A nickel of nearly hairless flesh marked the cyst she'd had as a baby, scorched away with dry ice. All the way home in the buggy, she screamed, my grandmother loved to say, affronted by the incivility of that din. But in the dimly lit living room of my grade school years, I only remember the quiet as I'd stand there above the smooth ring of flesh, white as a full moon, in the dark heaven of her hair, and pluck away the stray grays to keep her youthful. Only now is it clear, nearly 20 after losing her, that of all the silver straws I drew, every one of them was the short one. I wanted to finish today. I've got one last poem here that I want to read. I wanted to finish with something a little bit on the lighter side after all that heaviness. It's literally a poem about apricots, but it can be taken in a couple of different ways, and I leave that up to the listener. It's called Apricot, a Love Song. It lets me enter without reserve. Thumb meeting thumb at the crack that arches below its stem, and then a parting of flesh. It unfolds like butterfly wings or like a book in miniature, gives up its hard brown heart as if it were never meant to be kept. It measures the tongue against its own firmness, says sweet but hints at tart, like any seductress who knows her part. Prunus armeniaca, Armenian plum. Ancient Persians deemed it the egg of the sun. The Romans thought it precocious, an early ripening peach. Neither plum, nor egg, nor peach, it is its own fruit, the dawn of temptation, a blushing little butt surrendering to my teeth. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so very much, Yvonne.
My pleasure.
Patricia Clark is the author of 6 books of poems. Just retired, Patricia taught creative writing for 30 years at Grand Valley State University. Her book is Self-Portrait with $1 Million, published by Terrapin Books. Welcome, Patricia.
Hi. Thank you so much, Karen. And it's just a delight to read with these 2 other poets, pandemic time or not. So thank you so much. I know we all really appreciate the chance to share our work. That's the key, sharing the work, so that people can hear a few words. My book, I thought I would read poems that show kind of a range of subject and tone as well. So I'll start with a kind of a Michigan poem. And the one reference it would help to know is that the UP, it's pretty famous, but it's the Upper Peninsula. So if you say UP, that's what. And this is both an ekphrastic poem after a painting that my husband did, Stan Cromer, and it's also an elegy for a pretty famous Michigan writer. It's called Grand Marais Estuary in Fog. Color of ice or heaps of snow, gray, blue, slate. Texture enough to point out land, 2 spots, but catalog the rest as sky, wave, or in between, where all reside, even us. How far we've come from home to stay at a hilltop cabin, riven with mice, brush burrs from the dog's coat, find a place in town to eat whitefish and hear the tales while the proprietor pours Pinot Noir, noting our clothing, hair, and diction as non-UP, but still acceptable to him. We made the pilgrimage when Jim was still alive, regaled him with 1 or more repeated stories, one about Ulysses, another a sledge struck at a deer, or was it a bear in town? The place laps on without him now, the bay, the bars, and in our town, a stand of staghorn sumac, turning red again, where we took photos of him and us. The giant, a monument before collapse, sprawled across his studio floor. Sometimes the title just is the explanation of where you got the poem, maybe. This is called At Random. I open the book on waking, dreaming, being to the chapter on dying. It's a day ahead on my calendar, shielded in mystery. How odd, I think, and how wondrous. If I could learn not to fear it, if I could embrace it. I look out on this day, gray shuddering down the green, filled with bird song, mostly cardinals and a lone wren, and a sudden downpour of heavy drops. That brought out the robins to sip up the rain from the driveway. In this way, everything is useful. When I go, some extra air will be around to be breathed by somebody else, maybe an orca or a child, maybe a grizzled dog. Somehow in these last couple of years, it was hard to write things that politics didn't try to seep in. And that's true of this poem. It's called Mallards at Rest. The woods regal in copper, russet gold, and the air seemingly spun gold, though it is November. Over planks of the bridge, we cross the lagoon, where down below, along water's edge, mallards have tucked wings, feathers, and heads. Only green on their crowns shows. I know any moment they could startle up into ducks. For now they linger as feathers over warm bodies, asleep in a world easily able to harm them. Like sleeping children or any group of innocents, let them rest for now. The dispossessed, lost, astray, wayward travelers, who if they can find peace for a nap in shade, let them be. Sometimes a poem might just come out of a conversation, and that's what happened here. And the title is Provenance. What do you think my necklace is made of? She asked. Something from the sea, someone guessed. Abalone, seashell, or perhaps used button turned on a lathe. No, the teeth of camels. That was her answer. And we talked about the personalities of camels and llamas there in the living room. If you comb a llama's fur stroking, it will hum. And it might puff out air softly, like a young child blowing out a candle. They spit, though, someone said. And I remembered the female llama of a friend that ate the male llama's genitals. There was a history to it of aggression and nipping. And we lifted forks then and ate mixed berry pie. Delicious, someone said, a little sour, then sweet. Poets are just up to no good. This poem happily doesn't refer to someone I know who committed suicide, and but when I wrote it, I was thinking about Anthony Bourdain and Kate Spade, whose suicides were widely reported and quite shocking. It's called After the Suicides. We had to go on without you, rise to work, open the checkbook and balance the funds. There was laundry to be bundled in the basement, shoved in the washer, someone forgetting just how terribly the spin cycle ends, how it leaves jeans sopping, though they eventually dried out to be hauled upstairs. And the living room collected dust on surfaces, dog hair stuck to the rug, clutter of books, and the kitchen, hearth of it all, hub of life. There spinach was old, florets of broccoli gone yellow. Ice maker welded the ice into cubes in a field. Potatoes had eyes, fish past its prime. And yet out of what was edible, someone wrought a meal into shape, a simple pasta sauce, an invented bit with mushrooms, onion, cream poured over tricolor fettuccine, or angel hair. That made us laugh. Angels, indeed. Yes, there was red wine from Tuscany. One of us set the table, smoothed the cloth, removed the crumbs, and we sat together, a candle's light flickering but holding. The draft didn't wink it out. Around our talk, most ordinary, blessed by a tone of kindness we each adopted without discussion. Lots of please and thanks as we handed food around, basket of steaming bread for buttering, and we knocked glasses, looking each other right in the eye, lovers, opponents, friends too, agreeing in courage, unvoiced, for another day. I'm glad that Yvonne read about animals and dogs, and one year, a whole bunch of dogs that I knew died. And it seemed only fitting to write a poem. And this is called Canine Elegy. All over town, dogs are lying down for the last time. How many bright balls lost in grass, frisbee spent spinning on air. What should be done with crate and leash, collar, basket of toys, blanket for sitting in the car? All over town, dogs are lying down. We mark her life as she left in turn marks on things she chewed. Christmas tree string of lights, chair legs, and on us too. She never dug holes in the yard, refused to run after the woodchuck I told her to chase or kill. She bolted once or twice after deer. All over town, dogs are lying down for the final time. Who do we grieve for, them or for ourselves? We scrub their bowls, the rug, hang up the leash. Will there be a next dog? Mostly she did anything I asked, jumped a hurdle or leapt onto a fallen log. If ever I hurt her, it was an accident. Foot I stepped on in the dark, hair clipped too close. Dogs are lying down to rest forever all over town, Molly, Rafe, and Scout, giving up their last breaths, leaving us to applaud how avid for life they were, even as eyes clouded, hips gave way on stairs. Images stay, dog pushing her muzzle into snow, licking the face of a veteran hunched in a wheelchair at the park, or sitting to let a child touch her velvet ear. Fur lies in corners of the house, sticky like burrs on clothes. Dogs are lying down in places all over town, and us with them at the last. And I thought I'd close with the book's title poem. And so then I have to say that I'm not young. There used to be these world fairs, and I guess they don't have them anymore, but this was in the 60s, and there was one in Seattle. And my poem is called Self-Portrait with $1 Million. Near a painted boulder with names of teams, high schools, sits the exit we take now to the graves. Near the hill, Scotch broom gold, that roaming place, the sometime swamp, where I see myself with my small brothers, 3 of us holding hands. Near the heart of it all, the family whole, before anyone was sundered, though Anne was about to leave us. I glimpsed her outside, leaning over to kiss a boy in a red car. It was so long ago, there weren't zip codes or cell phones or the internet, and the World's Fair was in Seattle, our grandmother flying in elegant hat and white gloves from Boston. Muscle memory holds so much, landscape memory too. That overpass, exit, boulder, hill, with a convoy motoring west, how for months I'd begged Father to take us to see it. $1 million in silver dollars coming out of the east, a police escort guiding it to the fair. Near the railing, Next to father, I stood watching while a semi blew past, dirt kicking up, pollen, road dust, freeway still being built. A motor parade, gone in an eye blink. I hadn't understood. I'd never see a single silver gleaming coin. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Jan Beatty is the winner of the Red Hen Nonfiction Award for her memoir, American Bastard, forthcoming in 2021. For many years, Beatty worked as a waitress, an abortion counselor, and in maximum security prisons. Her new book is The Body Wars, published by the University of Pittsburgh Press. Welcome, Jan.
Thank you. Thanks to Karen Schubert. Thank you for having me here and having all of us, and happy to read with Patricia and Yvonne, and thanks to Youngstown Lit, or is it Lit Youngstown? I'm not sure. Anyway, either way, it's a good thing. So I'm going to start with a couple train poems. I've been, of course, dreaming about escaping on a train, which I almost always do, but now it's kind of intense, more intense. This is called Coastal Starlight. I like the side life, what's happening out the window, but I can feel it like it's in my body. We carry the bodies of all our failures inside us, need to bury them, burn them. Surfers lined up in the water like little animal heads waiting for a wave. So beautiful. Their vulnerability so painful. Go to Oceanside, right on the 101, a blink and gone town. Pamela Anderson and her red bathing suit could run out to greet you, or maybe just the suit. If you stay on the coastal starlight, you'll see palm trees with crew cuts, a shiny black gate, and a guy will get on with a surfboard in a split pea green soft case, the color of the sea on his planet. Incredible light on the mountains and burnt out yurts on the beach. It's inevitable that Neil Young sings in your headphones. There was a fanfare blowing to the sun. There was floating on the breeze. Then you see the long piers, white wooden railings, and the humming house cafe. I don't want your redemption story. I want some air. In resurrection, the men disappear into the smallness of their ideas. And I was wrong so many times, but I keep being with glimpses of my former beautiful incantations, incandescence. The Taos energy worker said, "You have an imprisoned heart." It's true that I always hated the oblique nature of what some call sophistication. And I came to hate what kept itself from me. I wanted sovereignty. But now it's hot in the underground canals, hot in the body's river, in my mouth, in this train car, radiant field, light and dirt, all this burning. Another train poem. It's called Containment. Containment. In this train compartment, the stainless steel breaks at an angle, hangs sharp. With the bunk down, there's enough room to turn around if you lift your leg strategically. Yet I love this containment, being inside of something, a pod, not wide enough to stretch both arms out, 10 feet long, 2x4 mirror, 3x4 window, narrow storage shelf near the ceiling, packed in like a dog, a fish, safe. I'm back in some womb, back in the attic with the hatch closed after me. Containment as escape. Bolt on the door, no way on or off the train all day as we wind through Canada. Why does this imprisonment feel like freedom and vice versa? I take pictures of the light switch a silver toggle, slide the weight-bearing lever to lower the bunk, repeat, the scraping metal, the clamp and safety latch at the foot, the design flawless and comforting. Freedom. The train runs 10 hours late, nothing works. Knowing no one. Give me this room, a place, some books, and my lover. I'm tired of arranging, talking, all the useless choices. I'll see you next lifetime. The train stopped for the last 20 minutes. We are here. More here than usual. I love to be stopped, to be in that moment of nowhere, on the way to, but not going now. What is that? Waiting in the midst of motion, the million small minutes of it that will never be remembered, but experienced fully. Stored where? Wi-Fi not working, phone not working. We are actually full body, breathing, feeling, here. So I have a lot of cab driver poems. This one is from San Francisco. Driver, Fulton Street to North Beach. 10 p.m. on a Friday, I jump in. The cab driver looks straight ahead. I've been looking up houses we used to live in when I was small. I found them on Google Earth. Not sure why, just wanted to look at them. Maybe you need to go back and get something, I say. We were dirt poor, he says. Never had enough milk to last the week. I don't know why I'm telling you this. I've been dreaming, he says. I used to wake up crying when I was a kid, 6 years old, and tell my mother I was sad that she and my father were going to die. You must have been worried, I say. She always said, that's not going to be for a long time. Now go to sleep. He squints into the mirror, then turns to look intently at me with oversized aviator glasses. Do you think dreams are real, he says? Do you think dreams make sense? I have a lot of poems about my father who died many years ago. This is called My Father's Bandages. In the yellowed photo from the 40s, my father wrapped in a hip sling, a half dress, his 140-pound body gleamy with sweat, almost dripping, his hands covered in bandages. He's looking straight into the camera, a cigarette to his mouth, a half fuck you, half smile, the jungle of Papua New Guinea behind him. You might not know it's World War II. It's the Seabees, that my dad said it was the most beautiful place he'd ever seen. Jungle rot, he said. Everybody had it. You just worked with the bandages. What was he thinking? Now, when I look at him, there's a river of light around him. What breaks my heart may be the same thing that breaks yours, or not. Just know that he was the builder, the one before the Marines came, and the scaffolding of bridges and roads and buildings. That can be a structure that slices into night on the other side of the world, a cutting away of light like an eclipse, the branches of the body and the light. Is the light primary or the branch? If you ever get a chance, go there, he said. Oh, Father, oh, bandaged man in the yellowed photo, saving wire of light in this partial night. Okay, so this next one began with something really stupid that I said. so many examples, but so this one, someone asked me if I had ever done heroin, and I said, no, I've never done heroin. I only snorted it, which is a classic addict response. And you know, I've been in recovery for a long time, and just so people don't worry when they hear this poem. This is called Speedballing. I woke bloody from snorting heroin, rocking myself skinless, the veins in my neck and my pink eyes speedballing blood, shooting up words like all addicts do. I never did heroin, I only snorted it. I never did crack, I just freebased the coke I had. Getting clean, a bigger mind fuck. Pray, they said. Good, they said. Let go. They wanted blood for their spiritual path, and I wanted to please. But inside, I was granular, weepy. I woke wanting frenzy, having never been trained in the sweet goodnight. When you ask yourself, who's the animal? Who's the killer? Just know they taught us to drink the blood of a man nailed to a cross when we were children. And so fuck it. Fuck sweetness, just fuck it, and every other misguided bedtime story. I skinned myself down to my own idea of bone until the song and gear shift became my only true loves, shooting up words to stay alive, because everybody wants blood. It's just where and how you want to give it. I have two more. Hot in the striped boy's heart. It's hot in the loading bridge, hot in the birth canal. It's hot in the striped boy's heart. We're two women driving to DC for an abortion in my beater sea green Le Mans with the sex, drugs, and rock and roll sticker on the bumper. It's hot living in my car with the mattress in the back, the windshield wipers disintegrating, and so it's raining all the way to DC. And my friend is terrified, let it go too long with a guy she loves, but he could care. And she can't face her parents. Borrowed money from the waitresses we work with, saline solution for a second trimester abortion. It's hot in the Silverman's t-shirt I'm still wearing from 6th grade with gold and blue stripes. Hot in the men's store buying my first real shirt with my girlfriend Patty. I was a boy then, not yet a woman, following the sight lines from the silver hood ornament to the double yellow. Hot in the Pontiac trunk of clothes and boxes and the cheap hotel in Silver Springs for the early morning procedure. Two women in their 20s out of state for treatment. Hot in this traveling altar, these bodies run amok. Body of light, body of doubles. Body of never telling anyone, never seeing her again. Hot in my striped boy's heart, in this car dragging home with no talk, still bleeding. Okay, this last poem is the title poem from my book. This is my book here, The Body Wars. And you can see it's also on my wall, conveniently hanging on my wall. But that's the painting from the cover. And if you get a chance, the artist is Michael Latenero, who's just a great artist, if you get a chance to look him up. The Body Wars. I walked into the woods bleeding. I left the town and mourned. Midnight in Alaska, still light, and I was alone, walking into the Sitka woods. It had been 1 year since I'd bled, and longer since I'd fucked anyone. I was propelled forward into the thickness, into the needles and dirt of Sitka spruce, and stupidly, not even afraid of bear. My father, the person I clung to, needed to stay alive, had died 6 months before. He was the only one who made sense in my body, and his leaving was the impossible thing. I didn't yet know my own wars and how to name them. So during my father's sickness, when I stopped bleeding, the gynecologist said, well, it's stress. And did I know that in World War II, the women paratroopers stopped having periods? I was stunned by his directness, intensity, earnestness. You are in a war, he said. I didn't know what to do with that, and so I got on a boat to Alaska, the Alaska Marine Highway, slept on the deck until I froze. Then the shipman gave me a hanging bunk and slipped me food from the cafeteria. They said, "You can sleep here, but watch out for the bow thrusters." I had no idea what they meant until the sound burst open and my berth swayed, and it was time to get off. It was a time of great changes, and days later I'm wandering the woods at midnight, feeling lost and found in this northern place. And it was there I felt the blood start to move, felt a rising and falling in the stream down my leg, and I cried in the forest alone for my beautiful father, gone too soon, for myself and all my ignorance, not even knowing my own wars, the ones already fought or the many to still come. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Jan.
Sure.
I really look forward to having a conversation about these books, and I encourage those who are listening to add these wonderful books to your collection. I'll post a link below on how you can make that happen. And Yvonne, I was wondering if you would please kick off the conversation. Yvonne, can you unmute yourself?
Muting me, but I've unmuted myself. Here we go. Thank you. It was a delight to be here to listen to both Patricia and Jan's poems. Jan, I know from reading your collection that the sense of place is very prominent in a lot of poems, and I wondered what function place has for you when you're writing and in life, I guess.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it has a big function, and as Karen said, I have this memoir coming out called American Bastard, which is all about adoption, the dark side of adoption. I was adopted. I spent the first year of my life in an orphanage, and so place is a big deal to me, and I believe it goes back there for me, not knowing until I was in my late 30s what my name was, or who my real parents were, and so that it was always really important for me to locate myself in poems and to have what I thought was authentic dialogue, So I believe it's because of that, and also, I kind of like to know where I am in a poem, no matter who's writing it,
Yeah, it seemed a little like it's an anchor, like it held the poem and you in place in a way.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, can we just do a fluid thing here?
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, it sort of leads me to Yvonne, what it's not place, but I kept having this feel with your poems. Maybe it's kind of elusive, but what I'm saying, but I kept having this rounded feel in your poems, and there were, I was just made some notes like spirograph, ringed in shadow, there was all this roundness everywhere, and even with apricot, and I just kind of had that feeling. And the moon, I love the moon poem, the little moon, and I just had this feeling of roundness all the time, and it was very nice. It was very comforting. I don't know if I'm onto anything there, or if that rings a bell.
It's certainly nothing I was conscious of, but now that you're talking about it, I mean, I noticed that it probably makes some sense. I like to feel a sense of completion and a sense of wholeness, and so that that rings true. But again, it wasn't anything I was conscious of. So it's an interesting point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Patricia, I was struck by how much of how many of the poems in your book were about nature. And I wondered if that was something that was always of interest to you, or if that's something that's evolved over the years. Because for me, I didn't used to write a lot of poems about nature, and in recent years, I've been writing more and more.
Yeah, I think it's practically always been there. And I think it goes back to some teachers, I mean, both teachers that I've had in person and poets who I've read, like Theodore Retke, who's really important to me. But Dick Hugo was one of my teachers, and he's all about the triggering town and finding a place. And I have to agree with Jan, place just seems essential in poems to be located somewhere. So when students would write these poems that were like nowhere, it's really hard to see how you get there or stay there. Don't you agree, Jan?
Oh yeah, many times on student papers, I'm like, where are we?
Yeah. Yeah.
Please tell me. But
yeah.
And
I think they think it's reductive, but it's just not. You can't go on that journey if you don't know where we are. So, I mean, nature, I do try, and I do have urban poems and some definitely urban landscapes and stuff, but it's kind of inevitable, I guess. And I got into gardening for a while, and that even made it worse. So I got into plant names, but there's a lot of metaphor around in that stuff. It's just not prettiness or anything. It's rich with all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So I defend myself.
Well, Patricia, you said some great stuff. When you talked about politics seeping into your work, I thought that was an interesting word choice. And
Yeah.
Can you talk about how it seeps in and what that feels like? And do you ever fight it, like not want to let it in, or?
Oh yeah. I mean, this has been a tough time, and there's a certain person whose name I just couldn't put in poems, that would horrified me. And I do have some that are a little more direct. One called Controlled Burn that kind of makes fun of local government, but I think just makes fun of people in general being so gullible and going along with what they're told, that this is going to make everything better. So I was glad to let it seep in. I guess I didn't really want to be that direct most of the times. I just don't find that works for me at all.
Yeah.
I'm just not. I don't want to get up on a soapbox and pronounce. I'd rather it just start coming in, and inevitably it just did, because it's there. The environment too. It's just there.
Sure.
So I wanted to ask both of you about principles of ordering poems in your manuscripts, because I find that to be such a fascinating and interesting thing. I think a lot of times readers aren't aware of what a vexing thing it is. But I found in both of your books that the beginnings were, not that I didn't read other parts, but the beginnings were really stunning. And well, like yours, Jan, it was the body wars leading off the book. And it just seemed so coherent and so in your face, but out there, that so how do you go about doing that and putting them in a good shape?
Yeah, that's a big question, right?
Yeah.
I actually I love putting books together. I mean, I do manuscript classes, and
Yeah.
like that process for some reason. Even though every book is different, but for mine, it was really unusual for me to put the title poem first. I normally wouldn't do that. I try to put it in the middle somewhere or something. But this book felt different to me. It felt like, I don't know, it felt like a lot had fallen away in the voice of this book, and it was just going to come out as itself. And so I said, what the hell? And it's its own section too. It's first
Right.
its own section, And I thought, yeah, I'm just going to do it. And then because I didn't want it, if it was next to other poems, it didn't seem to have the same authority I wanted it to have. So it was a risk. And I thought, if my editor doesn't like it, he'll tell me about it. But usually what I do is, as you said, open either with a really strong, tough poem or with a more welcoming poem, one of the two. And then I'm a big believer in going with the energy between poems to avoid any kind of sense, obvious sense, or but just look at the end of one poem, the beginning of another, and see if there's kind of a spark between poems. I'm a big believer in that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I noticed, Yvonne, in yours, the Summer Lament, it just seemed like, I mean, it's different than Jan's, but it was a very welcoming poem and we're going on a journey. There was a lot of forward momentum that I thought drew me in. And I thought that was a perfect choice. So talk about that if you want.
I can't remember how I ended up deciding to start with Summer Lament, but ordering of poems in a manuscript has vexed me for years.
Yeah.
I've really struggled with that. And this is the first time, and I think this is why this collection got published, that I really had a strong sense of how to order the poems. And I kind of wanted there to be a dialogue between poems about nature and poems about human nature, so that they were kind of talking to each other in a sense.
Yeah, because your next poem is "And Then the Nap Takes Me," out of Boswell's Life of Johnson. So I guess that's the human against the nature of the first.
Right. Yeah.
So that's that spark that Jan's talking about, where you get some tension between the two.
Yeah, I think in the past I've had a tendency to want to group poems that are on the same subject together, and that ends up
that can be deadly.
Yeah, it gets a little boring after a while.
And I really have been taught by whoever, work against chronology. Don't do chronology. Don't do when you wrote the poems. Do something much more interesting. So I've just found that both of yours and Jan's years for the grouping, that was a surprise, but that worked. The voice was so strong in there.
Thank you. Patricia, I can tell you're a good teacher. You're making connections with all this and pulling it together. That's great. But yeah, I want to say something about chronology. I think there's a lot of people out there who are in high praise of chronology, and I always fight against it. And because I don't even understand why you would do it. I really don't. I mean, poetry doesn't run by chronology. Poetry is has its own time and space. And, when I first started out, though, with my first book, I was putting like my father poems together, my sex poems together. And I have to give credit to Judith Vollmer, who's an amazing poet, and luckily for me, a good friend. And she said, mess these poems up. And she said, put this sex poem next to the father poem. I said, I really don't want to do that. And she said, just do it. It's like. Yeah,
Stan Plumley told me that and just said, mix these up and put them, you want angular kinds of, and so sex and the father, that sounds perfect. One of our students came down there to Carla Lamb.
Oh, yeah.
You know Carla?
I taught Carla, yeah.
I hope she was a good student, but she was wild, but I thought she had some real talent.
Oh, she's great. She's working for Cities of Asylum now in Pittsburgh.
Good.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh's an incredible literary landscape.
It sounds like it. I'm so jealous.
And Chicago as well, right? And Patricia, do you feel like you have that in a broader sense where you are?
In Grand Rapids?
Or
I mean, there are, Jan, oh, you mentioned, Karen, you mentioned Sean Prentice. So there are a good number of writers here, employed and unemployed, so anyway, it can be a pretty good place, yes. Not like Chicago though, and Pittsburgh, I don't think.
Yeah, there's such a wealth of literary events going on all the time in Chicago. It's almost impossible to keep up.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now you can't go to anything, so
No, this is true.
yeah.
But Yvonne, I wanted to ask you a question about one of your lines. The line, "The body is an atheist, even in war." I thought that was a great line. Can you just talk about that line a little? Because I might steal it. I would give you credit for it.
That's fair.
I wrote that poem for a friend of mine whose sister died at a young age, and he had been raised in a religious household and was really struggling with how to deal with his sister's illness. And I can't remember precisely how I came up with that, but it seemed like a good line to end that poem on.
Great line.
Yeah. My wife accuses me often of being a really bad agnostic because I use religious imagery a lot in my poems, but it's a very convenient shorthand. I find almost everybody is aware of these different symbols and facets of religion, and so it's a good way to talk about things in a shorthand kind of way.
Right, you're allowed to use whatever words you want.
Yeah.
Well,
he just likes to tease me. So
have both of you been writing during the pandemic? Have you been moved to keep writing?
I have. I actually had an illness over the summer and have been going through chemo, and that in large part has been my main topic since.
Sorry about that.
Probably. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Boy. I'm almost done. My last chemo is this Wednesday, so.
Good luck. Good luck.
Thank you. Yeah, it's expected to be curative, so I'm not. I feel very lucky. But that certainly has given me a lot of material to ponder and write about.
Wow. I'm glad you're writing during that.
It helped me sort through things.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been writing. I didn't know if I would, because most of my writing I do on the road. I do when I'm traveling, and I'm like, I'm not sure how I'm going to do this. So I've been writing about different things though. So a lot of my poems in this last book take place in California or Texas, so I've been writing different poems, and that's fine. But I didn't know. I'm getting my poems from reading, which is always good, and stealing from people, as we do.
Why not?
Yes.
How about you, Patricia? Have you been writing?
Yeah, I just keep writing. I'm not saying it's good. I worry about that later on. I just keep at it and write something. I've been doing a lot of syllabics. I've just been having fun with things, reading people and reacting. And I think we're lucky to have a life of the mind and life of writing, because I feel like I've been very busy.
Yeah.
As difficult as it's been not to go out and travel, the loss of travel has been terrible, really terrible. But
yeah,
that sounds awfully selfish, so I'll be quiet, because many people are suffering so bad,
Right.
So just to have health insurance is so good. And anyway, our country, we've got some things to solve.
But congratulations though on your retirement.
Yeah, thank you. So you're still teaching?
I'm still teaching.
Good for you. Good for you. It's so fun.
How is retirement?
It's amazing. I highly recommend it. I'd say come along and join me. I don't have enough time in the day. I've been reading more Tolstoy and Proust and things that I just didn't have time for before. So it's wonderful. It's really wonderful.
That's great.
Fun to meet you this way, both of you. It's really, Karen, look what you do. Bring people together.
Oh, thank you for your kind words. And thank you all so much for this wonderful time that you've spent, the generous sharing of your work and engagement with one another. I'm extremely grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is
Yeah.
this a good time to say bye, or
It
are
is.
people going to ask questions?
Yeah, this is a good time, and I hope our paths cross again. Thank you again so much.